Calling this meeting to order. Mark, would you lead us in the pledge?
Sure, I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I saw that you called not it, but you didn't get it.
Okay, first of all, I want to welcome everybody to the school board meeting tonight. It is nice to see the faces in the audience. This is Mrs. Jones's, is it the government class or which class is it? It's the what? Business Professional Communication. Thank you. Okay, so welcome. Our meetings are sometimes exciting. Usually they're pretty mundane, but Mark sometimes gets on a roll and will make things entertaining for us. I had three things I wanted to mention to you before we get on with the rest of the meeting. I wanted to, first of all, give you an update on the situation between MTSBA and the National School Board Association. I know you have seen it in the paper. We had a 3-hour discussion the other day that led to the vote to leave the National School Board Association. And the thing that I want to tell you is this was not a knee-jerk reaction, definitely not solely because of the letter that was sent to the White House and the opinion written by the Attorney General. If you're not familiar with that, I will be happy to give you more details later. It's been in the news. But there has been about a 15-year conversation with the National School Board Association about their role that they are supposed to be representing the state school board associations. They've not been living up to their mission, and so there have been lots of conversations, I would say in the last 3 years, about what they can do to improve. And when MTSBA paid their dues in June, it was with the caveat that they expected to see certain improvements, more involvement by the state leaders. That has not happened. And so after deliberating for about 3 hours, we made the decision to not remain a member of the National School Board Association beginning June 30th. Our dues are paid up until that point. We wanted to keep our seat at the table. I mean, we paid our dues. We weren't going to try and get a refund. So we still want to maintain a seat at the table. There is another national organization forming. There's about 25 states right now that are looking to join that organization, so there will still be some national advocacy for that. So, little itchy the last month or so, but I think things are settling out. The main thing they wanted everybody to know was they value community input, they value parental input. And that message was not projected well by the National School Board Association. In fact, the letter that was sent unilaterally by 2 individuals in the organization. So, hopefully we can get back to getting our good national advocacy done. The other thing I wanted to say was in regards to our strategic planning. Darlene and Micah and I have been talking to get this going, and we have decided that we're not going to start our listening sessions with the community until January. Just with the holidays coming up, we all have enough on our plates that we will start the listening sessions. I am going to send out a doodle poll to all of you to figure out which dates would be best for you, because this will be led by board members and administration, and we will be inviting members of the community in with some questions. We'll be doing a survey. We'll have a link to our website. We'll have its own web page. Did I use the right words there, Will?
You did great.
Okay, great. So, you know, I'm pretty excited about that, and we're working on the questions to be put into the survey right now. But look for that doodle poll in your email, and just put down which dates you would be available to sit in on a listening session. We will have one at the end of the school day, like at 3:30, and one at 6 p.m., and there will be one by Zoom also. And then we want to get some student input, so we'll probably be going out to some of the classes at maybe the middle school, Glacier, and Flathead. So stay tuned for that. The other thing I wanted you to be aware of is we will be doing Micah's evaluation during the month of January, which is, we usually do it, finish it up in February, but I kind of want to get it done so we can concentrate on strategic planning, okay? And it'll be the same process that we've used in past years. There'll be some input from Micah, some questions for us to fill out. And the other thing I want you to notice is I want you to notice that the colors that Callie is wearing tonight, I have to embarrass Callie every now and then. She's wearing maroon and gray.
Isn't that Grizz colors?
You think?
I've had a stomachache all day. I apologize to the broadcast. As you should.
Well, we have to have a little fun. Okay, that's what I had for my information. So, first thing on our agenda, the approval of the minutes. So I'm assuming everybody has read through the minutes. Are there any corrections?
I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Mark. Is there a second? Kim, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes as they are written, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Been approved unanimously. Building update. So we have Hedges update today. Oh, we've got a whole crew. I'll turn mine off.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys, for letting us move up in the agenda a little bit. We have some people that have to present at 6:30, and our driver's ed instructors as well. So I appreciate you letting us go first. I brought the dream team with me today. We've presented a couple different times on a couple of different topics, but there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes at Hedges, and so I wanted to give some recognition to these three, and didn't want to be the one up here taking credit where credit is not necessarily due. It's a team approach, so I wanted to bring the team with me. We have Ashley Smeltzer, she's our counselor at Hedges, and Shemaya Bennett is our special education resource teacher, and Christy Bortz is our instructional coach. So we wanted to present to you guys on the Hedges SOS process. I'm not sure if any schools have kind of given you a rundown of what SOS looks like at the elementary level, or how much work and thought and effort goes into this on a daily, weekly, hourly, monthly, yearly basis. So we wanted to give you at least an overview. It's a very complicated process, but give you kind of a quick gist of what happens, and then let you guys ask questions and dig a little deeper if you want.
Is it on? On the side?
It's like,
There you go.
Right, so we're excited to present our SOS process to you guys. It's been something that we've been working really hard with at the elementary level. And then in the last few years, we've had the district support with our SOS team. And so that's been really helpful in streamlining some of these processes for us. But like Brent said, it's been a team process at Hedges. And it's just been great to have all of our teachers on board and working toward the same goal of supporting our students. And so up here we have our flow chart. Our green is our Tier 1 instruction. Tier 1 instruction is what all of our students get. And so regardless of what extra supports they need, they're getting our Tier 1 instruction, which is our Wonders, our Go Math, our Lucy, and our SEL standards now. And so our school counselor will talk more about that. But so they're all getting our Tier 1 support. We're looking for about 80% of our students, at least 80%, to be successful with Tier 1 instruction. If they're not successful with Tier 1 instruction, they're going to start moving through our Tier 2 and our Tier 3 processes. So you can see that we've got two Tier 2 sections. That's because we want to make sure that we're providing enough interventions, that we're really targeting specific student skills so that they can catch up and get on grade level with the rest of their peers. And so our first Tier 2 intervention is they're going to be placed into a one of our district adopted intervention programs. Reading mastery, corrective reading, now we have bridges for math. And so they're going to be placed into one of those groups so that they can kind of fill in those gaps and hopefully we see some growth and progress to meeting grade level standards. If they're not successful with that, we're going to move on to a second Tier 2 intervention. And that's going to be more targeted toward some of their deficiencies. And so some things we might do are we might give them an extra dose of reading mastery, or we might do integrity, which is a phonemic awareness skill. And so we're going to try to identify some different areas where we can move them forward. If at the second Tier 2 intervention, they're still not being successful, then we're going to move into Tier 3, which is looking and saying, do they have a learning disability? Is this something that we need to look to Shemaya, our resource support for? And so they're going to go through all of these different steps because our goal of SOS is to keep students in the classroom and provide the least restrictive environment. And so, did I miss anything? Yep.
Lots of Tier 2 to try to prevent us from getting to the Tier 3 or to a spot where we have to provide in the classroom as much as.
Okay, our next slide is really awesome. It shows the work that our SOS district team has put forth with the help of Kyra and Eric on our Power School end. And so when we have a student who is identified as needing extra support, we can go in and we can open up an SOS form. And this is something that's available so that the teachers can see, and if they move to schools within our district, then this will follow them so that we're sharing information about our students across the district. Some of the interesting parts are, if you look at the top, you can see the heart with the house in it. That's our icon, so when teachers are scrolling through their class list at the beginning of the year, they can see that icon. They're like, oh, this student has an SOS form. They need extra support. I'm going to think about that when I'm setting up the learning goals for them, where I'm placing them in the classroom. And so that icon is just kind of a reminder for them that they've got an SOS form and it's something that they should be following up with. And then we've got our tabs, and we've got a teacher form, teacher concerns and interventions, our TLC form, and then our team meeting notes. And so these are different forms that we're going to go through and fill out so that we can have a holistic approach in supporting the student. So our teacher form is going to look at, it's going to look like this. And what we want the teachers to do is make parent contact, have you notify the parents if there's behavioral or academic concerns. And so we really want to make sure that parents are are informed and they know what's going on in the classroom. We also want them to identify potential impacts to education. So for our younger students, like in kindergarten, do they have a late birthday? Did they have speech, language deficiencies when they were in preschool? And so some of those environmental factors that may be impacting their learning.
We just did some screenshots to show you kind of, in the Power Split what this looks like. It's awesome that it's all in Power School now, and kudos to Kyra and Eric for working with. It's the same at every school. Or each school kind of have their own SOS box, and then we'd have to make sure and share that form with all the different. And next year, you'd have to remember to share all those documents with that teacher, and middle school, share it to them. And so as you can tell, some things just kind of got lost in translation. Now it is all in Power School, it's all documented, and it follows them all the way. Line for all the different. Process a lot too. Or goes to Russell, they can see all.
And then you can see at the bottom, we also have a section for student strengths, which is one of my favorite parts on the form, so that we can identify what is the student good at, what are they successful with. If they're really good at art and drawing, maybe we can incorporate some of those into some of our intervention strategies that we're using. And so we really just want to support the whole child and try to identify what are some deficiencies they have, but also what are some strengths that we can build on.
All right, so part of the work that we do is through our PLCs. So once a week, our teachers have kind of an extra prep time where their kids go to specials so they can meet as a team and talk about how to support kids. And so we have academic PLCs and we have behavior PLCs. So when we have the academic PLCs, we kind of look at the different shared assessments that we have on kids. And some of those are created assessments the teachers have done to kind of see how far along and what kind of growth the kids are making. And some of them are the district adopted assessments like Ames Web, where we benchmark test kids 3 times a year and then progress monitor monthly those that are behind to make sure that we're making academic growth with them. Like I said, some of them are classroom assessments teachers have created. Some of them are with our curriculum, built-in assessments with our Reading Wonders program, end of chapter assessments, comprehension tests. Some of them are our Go Math assessments for the end of unit. Some of them are just end of lesson quizzes. So they kind of review those and compare. So the 3, 4th grade teachers might be all sitting in a room and bring one math assessment together and compare. Man, how did your kids do so well on that? How did you teach that concept? And, oh, you did it that way. I want to come watch that. And then one of us can go sub in their room. They can go watch their partner teach that same lesson because they have a unique way of teaching it. Things like that that we can do to give them extra opportunities. In those academic PLCs, we also review their intervention groups. So we review what different reading groups, math groups, and things the kids are in. We talk to those paras or teachers that are providing that intervention and talk about whether certain kids are taken off from that group or certain kids that are struggling from that group. And we re-level groups as needed, typically every 8 weeks, sometimes sooner, sometimes fewer. Just kind of depends on how those groups are going. And we want to make sure and review the data and make sure that all of our Tier 2 and Tier 3 kids are receiving supports. So the level of support they receive depends on their level of need, but we want to make sure that all the kids that aren't performing at that Tier 1 level are getting some type of support to help them out. And then we review SOS plans and decide whether we need to have a Tier 2 meeting or not, and whether those interventions are working. And then once a month, we also do a behavior PLC that Mrs. Smeltzer here, our counselor, runs, so I'll let her talk about that.
Our process for behavior is very similar to the academic side. So we start with reviewing data, and we're looking at different data through PowerSchool and just our forms to look at what behavior is happening. Are teachers aware of all of that's happening? Are all of the parents aware? And our team, are we all aware? And then how do we manage that? We're looking for trends and patterns. We also revisit the Tier 1 social emotional instruction that's happening. So we've been tweaking that over the years, and we've been incorporating Harmony curriculum more into our morning meetings so that we're consistent as a building to make sure that every kiddo is getting social emotional support. And then I'm also going into the classroom to teach lessons that are following the benchmarks as well. And we just discuss what are trends, what are you seeing in your classroom for behavior needs? What ideas do you have to help support that? And the teachers are phenomenal resources in that. And we're not reinventing the wheel every time. So we're just, oh yeah, I used to do that. Let's try that strategy. Then we break it down. So we have discuss group needs, and that might be a group that I offer or that gets offered through our, what's called our pick room. And I'll talk more about that in a bit. We also just discuss student needs, like looking at the whole student. What's going on outside of home or outside of school? Is there stuff going on at home? Do they have needs with snacks? Do they need anything from our backpack program? Can we make sure that we can help contribute to some of those basic level needs so that they can learn? Then we kind of go from there. And just brainstorming and implementing different classroom interventions and accommodations. So that might just look like noticing a student is having a hard time transitioning in from recess and they're in the building, but they're still at recess mentally, so giving them a 5-minute break. Or just having them do a job, bringing something to the office to help them regulate so that they're ready to learn again. And then after that, we decide if we've been doing these interventions and we're still seeing a need and this student keeps popping up, then we decide there might be a need for a tier 2 meeting, and that's when we bring the whole crew together to really brainstorm interventions and then how do we document that? How do we make sure that what we're doing is working?
And this is just kind of an opportunity to see what they fill out in Power School as far as the work they've done in the PLC. So if they've had weeks of meetings and they've tried different things, there's different spots for them to document the different accommodations they've tried, whether it's text-to-speech on an iPad to help a student, whether it's having a scribe, whether it's different prompting for different behaviors, different directions clarified and repeated to them. I mean, all the different things that we've done. You can mark all of these different check boxes as ideas. You can type in notes. I mean, it's a whole complicated process, but here's kind of where we document it in Power School. And then that brings us to our tier 2 teams. We've done all these things to try to help, but we're still seeing some issues. The teacher's still kind of struggling. This is our tier 2 team, along with our pick room, our behavior para, our positive intervention center is our pick room. And those of you that were on the tour last year have kind of seen that room and some of the things we do in there. And so we come together every Tuesday. We actually just met a few hours ago from 2:15 to 3:15. This team gets together and meets. And we invite the school psychologist if necessary, other people that work with that student. So this team actually kind of meets before. We meet from like 2:15 to about 2:40. And we have different students that we talk about, different grade levels that we talk about, different sets of data that we look at as a team to make sure the school is functioning at the right level. And then we bring in individual teachers based on students they have in their class that have needs. So if a teacher fills out a SOS form and they have a second grader that's been trying all these different things, really struggling, we met on a second grader today, and we bring that teacher in. Sometimes we invite a reading group teacher or a playground person that's having trouble, and we just discuss what interventions to implement and kind of go from there. We decide what accommodations or extra accommodations they might need, and so we kind of talk about those specific supports for that individual student, and then we kind of talk about intervention plans. We review any previous interventions that we've done from past years or past months that were successful, that maybe they grew out of and didn't need anymore, but now they're needing it again, or previous things that we've tried that weren't successful, so we don't try that again necessarily, and kind of decide what we want to do. And then we determine what intervention we want to move forward with and what data collection tool we want to use, because there's so many different things we can collect data on, and there's so many different tools that help you depending on what data you're trying to collect. And then we discuss next steps before we leave with that teacher, so they know exactly what our next steps are and set any future meetings. So if we're going to try those interventions for 6 to 8 weeks, we set the next meeting 6 to 8 weeks from them on the calendar. And here's kind of an accommodations page. You can see some of the different accommodations that they've tried. Note all of that in Power School. When did it start? Who was doing it? When did we exit them from that? All that kind of stuff. And if they're still struggling after all of that, we move on to our Tier 3 team.
So for our Tier 3 team, this is the time when we typically are bringing in our school psychologists. Sometimes they're involved with Tier 2, but we definitely use them for Tier 3. So Tier 3 is our highest need students, and we're they're in this level before they get to the special education process. So we might also invite CSBT or maybe our behavioral para, or if there's specific paras that are working with that student in small groups that have knowledge specific for that. At this point, we're going to review all of our data, and then we're going to identify our next steps. So we might, if we've only done one intervention so far, we're going to be looking at more interventions. We might have to look at some different accommodations that we're going to be doing. And at this point, we typically are discussing if we need to get to the special education evaluation step. We're going to look at, do we need to evaluate for a learning disability? Are we looking at behavioral needs or social emotional needs? We also discuss if there's some sort of an outside diagnosis such as ADHD or autism that might be impacting the student's education. For academic interventions, we have a lot for reading. Reading mastery, corrective reading, and the level LLI, the level literacy intervention, are pretty, they encompass a lot. So they've got comprehension, decoding, and they're looking at fluency. Phonics for reading really supports our students with developing their phonics. For words, looks at taking the students and helping them to break down multisyllabic words and understanding the meaning of all the different parts. Our Read Naturally Live helps the students work on their developing their fluency through a lot of repeated readings and self-monitoring. The Haggerty phonemic awareness helps the students identify like blending and segmenting of words or just the specific phonemes. And then Bridges is our new math curriculum. That's a database math curriculum. It's fantastic for an intervention. For behavior interventions, check in, check out could often be a tier 2 or a tier 3 intervention. So at the tier 2 level, we're just looking at, are you following our school rules, being respectful, being responsible, being safe, ready to learn. When it gets to the next level, it's more individualized to that student. So maybe that's overwhelming and way too much to tackle. So then we really break it down on hands to self. And we track that like 5 times every hour because we're trying to make sure that they're successful and seeing some of that success. Take room breaks, so that's our positive intervention center. So there can be scheduled breaks where I mentioned earlier, if they're having a hard time at recess, they could go in to help get some regulation down before going back to class. But we can also use it as a positive incentive. So if kiddos are doing well with their check-in, check-out, they check in with an adult in the morning, they review their goals, they're meeting their goals, then they can earn a break, or they can earn a different reward. Other interventions that we do, so social skills groups, these are just a few of the examples. That zones of regulation, where you're helping kids identify how they're feeling and then able to regulate that. Why Try is about motivation. Coping Cast is about anxiety. And there's a whole other slew that we do on a as-needed basis. We also have a structured recess. So if there's a student that's really struggling each recess, we're keeping them inside so that we can do some instruction around what does it look like to play fairly. And let's role play that. And then as we keep doing that, then they get to graduate to outside and it's scaffolded so that they can be successful. We also have a sensory room that's really great at our school. I like staying in there. It's awesome. Sensory breaks, positive rewards, and a token economy system. So just trying to help support, what does that look like for this kiddo? What are they motivated by? What are they interested in, and how do we tap into their strengths? And then just lots of individualized, kind of outside the box things as well. So for all of the interventions, we have to collect a lot of data, especially going into the special education process. It's all data driven. So all of the interventions that are academic have a lot of data collection that's built into it. So the parents are collecting, the teachers, but we have to be a lot more creative with collecting data for behaviors. So all of, especially in the tier 3 zone, we have to really make them specifically for our student needs. So we have to determine who will implement the intervention, the teacher, a para, how long we're going to be implementing it for, and who's going to be collecting the data. And then we have a ton of different data collection methods. So some students have, they have it based off of their schedule, where it's check in, check out. So they're, like Ashley said, they're earning points for that goal multiple times a day. And then we have frequency charts where a teacher might be writing down how many times that student flirted in a 10-minute period. Sometimes teachers are collecting anecdotal records where they're just writing down notes, which is a great form of data collection. It might be individual goal tracking, looking at the student has this specific need and we're just going to be focusing on that goal. also have student input forms. So this is one with smiley faces over here. That's one of my students that he actually fills it out at the end of the day. And then it sends a note to his parents that says exactly how he did in each of those subjects on his goal area. The students can be really involved with it. Teachers have access to all of this. It's all on the MySped website. So there's examples and it shows them how to fill them out.
Data collection method they choose kind of depends on what the behavior is or how frequent we're seeing it, because it can be a lot of work on a teacher. So if it's blurting and they're trying to work on that, they might just track blurting during math. They might just track, blurting during, to do it all day long. I mean, sometimes they have clickers, they can just kind of keep teaching their lesson and just keep kind of clicking how often it's good. So we just have kind of a baseline, and then once we implement the intervention, we can determine whether the intervention is bringing that baseline down or helping or not. Questions for us on SOS and all of the different things we do? That first slide, I think, was pretty overwhelming, but it shows you how kind of in-depth and complicated the process gets, and there's a lot of the what if and if else in here. Ursula.
You had mentioned that the goal was, or maybe I don't know if it was the goal or if it was our number, and that's kind of my question, is that 80% thing. And, I know some of the kids would need reading and math and behavior, but is it about 20% that need it for each thing? Or, like, how many kids are we serving beyond Tier 1, percentage-wise? Is it that 20?
And that's a kind of a loaded question, Ursula. It kind of depends on what, according to what, right? According to SBAC, according to Ames Web, I would say that at each grade level, it kind of depends. And it also depends on the number of people you have to try to service some of them. So the plus side is when I'll take Ames Web, for example, and we do this kind of every year. I usually do it in January on Martin Luther King Day when I present to staff at our staff meetings. We usually do it at the end of the year to celebrate our data. But when you look at our just typical kind of RTI triangle where, the green is the Tier 1 and then Tier 2 is yellow and the Tier 3 is red, and we look at that from kindergarten through 5th grade, you can continually see the green growing and the red shrinking. So I would say exponentially higher number in kindergarten of kids outside of that 80% or Tier 1, and then that number slowly shrinks for 1st grade, 2nd grade. By the time we hit 5th grade, so for example, in kindergarten, 1st grade, we have 7 pairs that are teaching reading groups. And so we have 7 different reading groups of kids that are pulled from class to do an extra intervention of reading, and the teachers keep those Tier 1 kids to do some different differentiations in their classroom. By the time we get to 4th and 5th grade, we only have 2 groups. So that number does shrink as time goes on, but each grade level, and then there's different bubble classes and things too. Kind of a loaded question, but if they stay with us from kindergarten to 5th grade, we definitely see that catch-up happen.
Just one more little clarification on that. I know it can be for like a bigger thing, but it could also be for like one very specific thing that they're struggling with, right? Like, do you think, and I don't mean for it to be a loaded question, but it seems like as I hear this, like, it seems like a lot of kids could need this at some point, and it's hard to imagine that any kid would maybe get all the way through school never needing something like this. Is that right, or does the Tier 1 mostly serve what it needs?
The Tier 1 mostly serves what it needs, and I think that the loaded part to your question is, are you talking academics or behavior? Mm-hmm. So I think, you might see 4 or 5 kids in each classroom that at some point are needing this for behavior, and then multiple classrooms per grade level. For academics, it's a much higher thing, but that number shrinks as they grow as well and get those skills they need. So to start the year for kindergarten, typically we have about 50% of our kids coming into kindergarten at Tier 1. So we're hitting 50% right off the bat. We're behind from that 80%. Does that make sense? So over time we catch that up. Other questions for us?
I have a question. You said that you were trying to keep kids in the classroom. Where in this tier level do they go out of the classroom? Tier 2 or?
Yeah, so as soon as you hit Tier 2, there's the potential to start being pulled for something, depending. Typically, this first part of tier 2 is what things are we doing in the classroom to try to support them, give them interventions, get them caught up and help them. And when they're still not making the gains there, then we start to hit the next set of tier 2 where we have to start doing more pull-out and a little bit more in-depth type of interventions. But our goal is always least restrictive environment as part of special education law, to keep them in the classroom with their peers functioning at that level. So kind of to answer your question, yes, between these two tiers is kind of where that pull-out starts to happen.
And, I should probably know this, but what is the PLC?
Professional Learning Community. So that's kind of what it stands for, what PLC stands for. So it's where our teachers get together, kind of like the teaming at the middle school level, where they have 2 preps, and one of them is their prep time and one of them is their teaming time. At the elementary level, we have one a week, one of those times a week, where they get to come together and just review data and plan and make these plans and wrap around those students and give them those supports. Other questions for us? Okay, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next on the agenda are recognitions and student reports. Micah?
Thank you, Sue. I don't know if it's or not. I think most of us are aware that our school board was elected as the Montana 2021 School Board of the Year. And I think it's fitting that we have students and staff and community members in the audience tonight to say thank you. The work that you do day in, day out, year over year, for some of you, many years, is just so greatly appreciated. People who are elected to the position, who are not paid, and to give up themselves selflessly for the betterment of our district and our much gratitude to all of you. I'd like to say congratulations, and I have a little plaque for each one of you. We're supposed to get a full-size plaque with everybody's name on it that we'll probably keep in the district office somewhere, but we'll have to make sure you guys.
I'll put it by my kid's class.
We'll
start competing. Thanks, Micah.
Yeah, you can put it on your mantle.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Micah. It is an honor to have this award, and definitely a team effort, because we've got very strong people on this board, and I appreciate it. I did forget one thing in my my chair report, and that is our Gyroscope Award. And if you recall, our Gyroscope Award is the award that we pass amongst our trustees to the trustee who has kept us on track to meet our mission, to be advocates for public education. And Will has the latest gyroscope, and I'm hoping he's ready to pass it on.
Yeah, thanks. When Mark gave me this gyroscope, you mentioned ask questions. I want to pass it on to the trustee who inspired me to ask questions, Ursula. During those first meetings, again and again, I'd be like, wow, that was a great question. And so just to honor her exemplary engagement and the business that we're doing as a board.
Okay, then we have our student reports. Kalispell Middle School, Neva Schilling. Hello, Neva.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Neva Schilling, and I'm an 8th grader at KMS, and I'm here to be telling you what has been going on in our school lately. So cross-country football and volleyball just ended up about a month ago, I would say, and it had a great turnout. I think the kids enjoyed it. It was really fun. Basketball has started for the 7th and 8th grade boys, and we have 7 teams for the 8th graders and 7 teams for the 7th graders, and that is going to be fun. I love basketball. The girls' basketball will be starting up after Christmas. We had our first concerts for the orchestra, band, and choir, which were amazing. I do choir. It's one of my favorite things about the teaching us. For now, we're working on our holiday concerts, and the 6th grade band and orchestra are going to have their very first concerts ever. And my little sister's in band. She's going to do amazing. The 7th grade does Penny Wars, which is starting this week, and it helps support our Life Skills Special Olympics Dream Adaptive students here at KMS. And basically, 7th grade home bases collect cash and stuff like that. And I didn't do it last year, but I think it's a great idea. Every October, we do something called Socktober, and it's where everyone, like KMS families, anyone, brings socks in, and we give them to the Heart Locker. Our goal was 500, and we got 580 pairs of socks, which is amazing. I think it helps many people. I love helping people. It's one of my favorite things. The parent-teacher conferences were held on November 4th, which had a great turnout. I think it was good for the parents to meet their kids' teachers and get a feeling if they're struggling, if where they're at in school. So yeah, I think that really helped. And then lastly, KMS is holding an annual holiday food drive, and that's the week of December 13th through 17th. Last year, we helped support 20 KMS families, and we made a huge donation to the Lions Food Drive, and we collected over 3,800 food items, 70 turkeys, and 24 frozen hams. I really think is amazing. I think we can do even better this year. So yeah, thanks for letting me come here to speak tonight. Feel free to come in whenever. Any questions?
So did your parents find out anything unusual from your teacher that they didn't know about you?
Don't answer that.
Not that I know of. So, yeah. Anything else?
I have a question. Did you say Penny Wars?
Yeah, it's, so basically home bases collect like pennies and cash and stuff, and they like go into other home bases and see like who's collected more. And we call it Penny Wars. I don't know why that reason, but that's it.
You're just comparing how the amount of.
Yeah, and we put it all together to support the other kids. So. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right, then from Flathead High School is Sanaya here. There she is. Okay. Did I say your name right?
Yes.
This time?
Yes, that's perfect. I get it pronounced wrong often. Hanaya, not Hanya. All right, so this November, we've had our Lightning Thief musical production, and that was on November 3rd through the 6th, and it was sold out for all of the shows. And it's, our musicals are a bigger deal than our plays because there is, it's a much larger production with a director and an added musical director that is working with the other director to make it musical, I guess. They also have choreography and dance numbers in their play. We had 55 students that were a part of the cast and crew, so good chunk of kids were involved in that, which is pretty exciting. And then in the completion of our first quarter, we had our parent-teacher conferences last week, yes, on the 4th, and that was exciting stuff. And then, so for our conferences, we had about 25% of parents coming to attend. And our first quarter is going to be added with our second quarter for our final semester grade. And then there's a chunk of the percentage being our final exam. So it's kind of nice to like block off the grades so you kind of start fresh at the beginning. It can be helpful. And then Thursday we have I'm wearing the cool shirt right now actually, for our Veterans Day assembly, and you have all received emails with invitations in that. So I hope you guys all join us and come to our celebration. With our fall sports, other than volleyball, we've wrapped up our fall sports. Our soccer team has a couple kids that received some awards. Landon Saraceno received all-conference. Riley Barnes received all-state. Fiona Coulter received all-conference, and Allie Pollen received all-conference. And then our golf, for golf, we had Jillian Wine receive all-state. And then for our cross-country, Lily Rumsey-Esch placed 4th in her race, and she's a sophomore. And then Madison Jellison came in 14th, and our girls team overall got 6th, and our boys team overall got 8th. So our volleyball team, like I said before, they are still playing, and they're going to be heading down to state this upcoming weekend in Bozeman, and they're the number 2 seed for the West. So we're wishing them luck this weekend. And then today we had the blood drive, and yeah, I didn't give blood, but that is, I don't know, one of my friends couldn't do it because she was 0.1 under like the blood drop count or something. I don't know, it sounds very fun though, and I know a lot of students contributed to the cause. And then we also have a sock drive this week, so that is a fun thing for the winter. Okay, well, do you guys have any questions? Yes.
On the blood drive, is that all students can participate in that, or just cutoff?
I'm, to my knowledge, all of the students. Oh, 16 or older. So that's probably about like sophomores, juniors, and up. Yeah. Oh wait, also we're starting our we have some open gyms for basketball happening like twice a week, and then we have some wrestling open mats going on too. So we're getting ready for those winter activities. Any other questions? No? Okay, perfect. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Hanaya. Is there a report from Glacier tonight? We just get the whole class here instead. Okay. Next on the agenda is an information item about the finance reports. Micah?
Yep. So these are our monthly financial reports. These were through September of this year, and probably the key to look at is what we've spent to date and what we have remaining. We're approximately a quarter of the way through the school year, and we've spent 16.7 to date, and we have about 83% remaining. The red sheet is our elementary funds, and things are looking good there. Still waiting for tax revenues to be collected, but we're in a good place there. And then the next sheet is the high school, and again, we're about 16.7 spent from our budget, and we have about 83% remaining. Any questions on any of those funds? And then the next report is our cash flow report. And this is one where every so often you're going to see some negative numbers in there. One is our internal service, which is our print shop. And we quarterly will collect money from each of the schools to pay for our print shop services. So it runs in the red up until a certain point, and then we go back and collect money out of the block grants from each of those schools. The other one in there of note is probably the self-insurance, keeping in mind that we're playing catch-up on that. We collect premiums from our employees 10 months of the year, but everything is budgeted out at 12 months. So you can see from like August to September that number decreased, and be able to show you a little bit on the insurance financials here in just a moment. Any questions on those cash flow? Right. And next, I believe we have food service. And what we're looking at here, if you want to scroll down just a little bit, you have your income and your expenditures, and then at the bottom, it kind of summarizes, keep going just a little bit, yep, right there, profit loss. And what you're seeing right now is a loss of year-to-date of about $16,000. But at the time, I talked to Jana earlier this week, and at the time that this report was run, we did not have our income from state and federal sources. So our food service continues to operate in the black, even though year-to-date it's showing a negative balance right now. We just haven't received the payments for our food service. And we'd just like to plug again that all of our students, regardless of income level, are eligible to eat free breakfast and lunch. And then the next one is our insurance financials. And I asked Delia there's a lot of numbers in this report, and I asked Delia to highlight what are the important numbers. They're all important. You're welcome. And so at the very top, you see the FCT 178, that's Flathead County Treasurer. So we hold all of our self-insured funds at the county treasurer level. And you can see we have some money sitting in First Interstate Bank. So as claims are processed, we have cash on hand to pay out those claims. And you can see right now that it looks like we're about $1.2 million in the red on that. But also keeping in mind that we're continually collecting revenue through our premiums as the year goes on. And then, Cal, if you scroll down, it's going to be page. There's one that says total revenue, so keep going. It's highlighted in yellow, right there. Yeah. So our total revenue, right now you can see that has increased significantly. We're at $1.8 million in revenue collected. We've had some larger claims that have already hit stop loss. And talking with Scott Haas and our insurance committee, we're actually seeing pretty good experience right now. Probably the one that has us a little more concerned from an experience standpoint would be our pharmacy experience. So we're seeing a little bit more there, but less on the medical side. So overall, we have a net revenue for the year of $85,997.52. So that's a good number to see. That's what you want to see. Any questions on the insurance financials? And then as you get into the rest of the pages, it really breaks down, what the revenues generated from in terms of employee premiums, what claims have been paid, and stop loss reimbursements, and it breaks out our care here, clinic expenses, and on and on. It's basically a line item.
Micah, you said you were talking about the pharmacy. Can you explain a little bit more about the expenses?
Only to say that some of the claims are really expensive. So depending on what the medication that's prescribed and needed is, that's what helps determine that. Tracy?
So Will, a lot of those expenses are called specialty drugs, and they have to do with like high-cost specialty drugs. That's what you're saying.
Okay, any other questions?
Okay, thank you, Micah.
You're welcome.
We will move into the business, part of the agenda. These are action items. I just want to, remind everybody that I will invite, public for comment at the appropriate time on these action items only. And you may comment on those items. Anything not on the agenda, we will have public comment at the end of the meeting. And we have our usual norms of behavior for public comment. They are comments, not questions, limited to 3 minutes. They will be directed to the board, not the audience, and we will not engage in a discussion at that time with the public. Okay, but I will invite you at the appropriate time. Okay? So, human resources and personnel. Tracy, go ahead.
Monthly report that we provide you with the employment activity.
So I'd make a motion to approve as presented.
Okay, first of all, is there any public comment? Okay, Lance made the motion. Is there a second? Thank you, Jack. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved unanimously. KEA, MOU.
Yeah, so this was discussed in, personnel and also, I believe, in finance as well. This has to deal with the KEA comp time that we had this year. We had a similar MOU that we brought forward last year, and that was related more to COVID. This year, we are having some issues, with our substitute pool, and that is a direct impact because of our local job market. And so we want to be able to have this flexibility to support our students and make sure that we have coverage in the classes. So this is a modification to the current CBA as it relates to comp time, and this will run through effective June, I believe the last day of school is June 10th, and then we will revert back to the traditional language. Any questions?
So this is to, mostly for the substitutes because of the job market.
This is for our teachers. So we are having problems filling our jobs. We have a small substitute pool. There's a labor market shortage everywhere in the valley, as you guys all know, actually nationwide. And so this MOA allows us flexibility to assign our teachers to an extra classroom or an extra duty, and then they are able to earn comp time. And at the end of the year, instead of being able to use the comp time, they will have that cashed out.
But this could also happen next
It
year
could,
if the job market doesn't.
yeah. We just want to do this on a year-to-year basis. We don't want to make long-term commitments. And right now, a lot of things are up in the air as it relates to the job market.
Move that we approve as presented.
Second.
MOU.
Let me ask if there's any public comment. Okay, hearing none, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously.
And I also just want to make a side note to my partner in crime, Lynn. We have a really outstanding working relationship with the KEA. We went through last year just as a real strong team,
and it continues on this year as well. And we also have that with our classified union as well. Chris Hirsch is not able to make it. I don't believe she'll be running late, but I just want to always acknowledge our unions and how amazing they are. Thank you.
Appoint interim clerk of the district. Micah, are you doing this one?
I can. Yep, so this is a district-wide action item. Montana code requires the school board to appoint a clerk of the district. When you look at code 29-213, I'm sorry, not 29-213, it's 20-3-325. There are basically two responsibilities for the clerk of the district. One is to be the custodian of all records, minutes, agendas, those types of responsibilities. And then the other is very specific in terms of the financial responsibilities of the district to keep track of expenditures and revenue and receipts and warrants and all of those things that clerks have to do. And in this motion, what you're seeing is it's two motions. One is to approve Beth Pornick as the interim clerk of the district with custodial care of records, which is a lot of what Beth does already. And then the other motion is to approve me to act as the interim clerk for the custodial care of the financial obligations. So things that require signatures like audit reports and expenditure reports and reporting to OPI and other regulatory agencies, those require a signature and some approval. So this is for an interim period of time. And I did check with Jack Agensberger, our county superintendent. We do not have to be sworn in after approving this because that is something that's done at the reorganization meeting in May.
Thanks, Micah. Any questions from the board? Any public comments? Hearing none. We have, again, two motions here. So
I'll make the first motion to approve Elizabeth Gornick to act as interim clerk of the district with custodial care of records.
thank you, Ursula. Is there a second? Seconded. Thank you, Rebecca. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
I'll make the second one too. To approve Micah Hill as interim clerk of the district with custodial care of the financial obligation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Ursula. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motions, both of them approved unanimously. Next is the consulting service agreement. Tracy?
So this is related to our classified union. I brought forward the concept, I believe, a couple months ago to the board, and we discussed this. And you supported the concept coming forward. This is just the contract that talks about the details of the project. We talked to Kathy Krigo in depth a couple of weeks ago, and I'm very excited to work with her. And I think she has a lot of experience, and I just think that this is going to be a really good program to go for. So I appreciate the support that you've given us. And does anybody have any questions on the specific contract and the scope of the work?
When I was looking at this, I was wondering, when was the last time we did a review? You know?
We have never, as far as I know, have done a formal review of the classified, or of any union in terms of how they are classified into their groups. We've done some market surveys, but we are not sure. We believe that this probably, this current structure was the initial structure in place at the beginning of the classified union when they formed. A long time ago.
Thank you.
812.
Any other questions? Any public comments? Anyone want to make a motion? Thank you, Jack.
I'll second that agreement as presented. I'll second that.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Will. Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Next up, Fund 91. Micah.
Yes, so you get to approve a new fund for the district, and this is regarding Title I compliance, and OPI is informing the district that in order to comply with Title I regulations, we have to have a fund to hold money for Title I services for students who are attending schools outside of our boundaries. So for example, we might have some students who qualify for Title I that are attending Stillwater Christian School. And then there's an exchange of funds between the schools. And so we have to have this separate fund to hold that money so that as we're making expenditures or bringing in income, it's tracked in a specific location.
Micah? We have a student who's attending Stillwater. Why aren't they just a Stillwater student?
Because they are a resident of this district,
That's my question.
physical resident.
So does Stillwater get any federal funding? This is like the only federal funding they would get, is that right?
Is
Like-
Title I,
Yeah.
yep. Yep, so every year there is a calculation for Title I, and a certain percentage of the funding that we receive in Title I funds from the federal government goes back to the school where services are being provided. So it's an annual exchange of money.
Any other questions from the board? Will?
So we're actually receiving this money from Whitefish School District.
Potentially, if there was a student from Whitefish that was here, there's kind of three options, and it's complicated, but there's three options for how to set this up, and we were a little late to the game, and so we were really left with just this option for the exchange of these funds between the. But every year we get an allocation. There's a formula. We set aside a certain amount of money and we make that available to any private or homeschool student. So there's a per student allocation for that.
Anyone else? Any public comments? Anyone want to make a motion?
Approve the opening of Fund 91.
Thanks, Diane.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Ursula. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved unanimously. Contracts. You gonna do this one too, Micah?
I am.
Okay.
You can hear a lot of me tonight.
Okay.
All right, so in front of you are the food service contracts, and this is an elementary only item. We contract with 5 elementary school districts in our area, and all those contracts are listed below, but it's Cayuse Prairie, Fairmont Egan. I'm not even going to remember all of them without looking back, but basically we provide food service for them, and then they reimburse us for those costs. So there you are. Yeah, Cayuse Prairie, Fairmont Egan, Helena Flats, Smith Valley, and Trinity Lutheran. As Lance so aptly pointed out, one of the contracts looks a little different than the others, and I guessed at that time that it had to do with the milk charge, and I was correct that one of the school districts provides milk for their students that our school district does not. So.
Any other questions? Any public comment? Okay, this is an elementary trustee only. Is there a motion from an elementary trustee?
I'm going to try to make that motion tonight. Move to approve the contract with the area elementary district as presented.
Thank you, Kim. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Elementary trustees only.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved unanimously. Next up is the surplus property. Micah.
I was gonna try and pass this to someone else, but I'll do this one too. So in front of you is an explanation of a process that we've been undergoing for approximately a year and a half. Last May, we purchased a lot in Old School Station, and that lot is adjacent to property that is owned by DCP LLC, which is a developer that owns the FedEx building. And they approached the district and said, hey, we would really love to expand our facility and have that lot, and we're going to buy the lot just to the north of you. Would you be willing to exchange those lots? And being good neighbors and community members, we said, well, let's talk about it. And so we reviewed it. We worked with our architects and engineers to see if what we needed from a facility standpoint and land standpoint could be accomplished in that other lot. And it was decided it would be beneficial to us for a variety of reasons. Multiple ingress and egress locations, cost less to develop overall, and there were some stormwater retention things. And so DCP said, you know, we'd be willing to do this with you. We'll pay any associated costs. And so we did that. And then just going back through, you know, what is our legal obligation in acquiring this property and then transferring it. We can't just say, we would love to just exchange it with you and exchange a little bit of money in the process. So we actually had to buy the lot from DCP, which we did at a board meeting last time, and then had boundary line adjustments completed, and we are ready to move forward with what I'm referring to as an exchange, but we'll actually be selling the lot back to DCP. But in order to do that, we have to declare the lot surplus, and then we can move forward with that. Part of the legal requirements of this is once you declare something surplus and declare what your intent is, we can give it away, we can sell it, we can do a variety of things with it. But once you do that, you have to give the public 14 days to file a notice with the district court of any objection. It doesn't mean that we can't move forward with it. We just have to make sure that the objection is noted and that our rationale for wanting to do the exchange is sound.
Any other questions? Any public comment?
Question says the original purchase price was $392,000 per acre, and there's $393,000, and then the best way to answer that, Sean, is that we are selling it back to DCP for the amount that we purchased it for at a price per acre. So $392,000 per acre. Where it says that.
Doesn't say per acre, that's a lump sum for the 6 acres.
Oh, at the very bottom, purchase price per acre, I see what he's saying.
Oh. That's a misprint.
Well, and I don't know if it's actually a misprint. I think it's because in that exchange, we adjusted a boundary line to give us a little bit more in lot 4 than lot 3A. The sellback price is the purchase price per acre. But no, it was not $393,000 an acre. That's oceanfront.
So really, that needs to have some clarification there at the very end, whether it's just
For that 393 would need.
I don't think it does, but
I should put a semicolon after acre and just say total purchase price was $393.
Jack and I could do this all night. What if you put in a
we'll invite you to a workshop with us, writing board cover sheets.
Like one of the, every time Jack and I are like, let's write it this way.
So is
Every time.
anyone comfortable
colon,
making this
parentheses,
motion?
I'll make the
With
motion.
change? Thank you, Jack.
Move to declare Lot 3A Old School Station as surplus property and move forward with the disposal process per state law. And this board action and to dispose of the property by selling to DCP LLC for the total original purchase price per acre, with the original purchase price being $393,087.
Made that addition, the additional wording in that. Okay,
Like it.
is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Ursula. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved unanimously. Next one, Transportation of Facilities Building.
Okay, you're gonna have to bear with me on this one. So I wrote this cover sheet Thursday, updated it a little bit Friday, and have a subsequent update to share with the board. So when and I have Tom Coburn here with Morrison and Merrily as well. He's my backup to make sure I explain everything correctly. When we first embarked on this transportation facility, it had some initial schematic designs. We kind of talked about what do we want and what would this potentially look like. We thought it was going to be around $5 million on those initial kind of first blush estimates. And so the board approved a permissive levy increase in the elementary and high school transportation fund to pay for part of that $5 million. And then we also have asked the board to approve approximately $2.8 million in interlocal agreement money. So it's basically being set aside for the completion and construction of this project. And the idea being that we didn't want to, if we had the money available, we wanted to try and do it in a fiscally responsible way. And so we basically had the $5 million set aside between the transportation levy and the interlocal agreement funds. And then we hired a construction manager, Martell Construction, and then they took the schematic designs and started to price out what this building was actually going to cost. And Callie, if you could scroll down, right there in that first box. So these are Martell Construction costs based on the preliminary schematic design. So the hard costs, $4.8 million. There's some soft costs, which include your insurance, payment bond, construction fee, and then a contingency. So with just Martell's numbers, we're at about $5.4 million. And then if you'll scroll down a little bit further, you have some other soft costs that include our architect and engineering fees. There are line items in there for IT. So that's not included in Martell's costs. Typically, the owners will handle that side of it. So whatever the cabling and internet requirements and fiber optic and all of those kind of things that are related to IT become our burden. We priced out our own bathroom accessories. You can see the impact fees and building permits from the city are included in there. And so those costs are about $1.1 million. So it brings that total project cost to $6.571 million. which is about $1.5 million more than what we had originally thought it was going to cost and what we levied for transportation and what we asked for in the interlocal agreement. So then we started looking at, okay, what are some potential either money coming back to the interlocal agreement or reductions that we could make in the facility. And before I get into those reductions, one of the things that we did, a group of us went and toured Whitefish's facility, which was just recently constructed and just basically opened this year. And then we also toured our own facilities. And one of the takeaways from that excursion was that what we have in square footage is probably adequate. It is not really looking at the future growth of the district in terms on the maintenance side of things. And so as we looked at what we can reduce, the first thing you say is, well, if you can reduce some square footage, you can start saving some costs. But there really isn't any reductions that we could see that we could do. In fact, after a little more review and discussion today, we think we need to have a little more covered storage. So this is just cold space. It's a place to park trailers and tractors and lawnmowers and snow plows and spreaders. And I mean, if you were to go tour just Legends area, our current transportation area, we have a lot of stuff. Some of it we can identify and say we can get rid of some of this. We don't need it anymore. We'll surplus it. If you want a sprinkler system from the 1960s, we probably have the parts for it. And so we looked at that, and one of the things that we could do for call it a cost reduction or money that we could bring back to the interlocal agreement is the sale of our current maintenance facility. We had a CMA done on that a year ago. It was right in around $400,000. I'm going to guess that it's probably worth more since they're putting up 4 ginormous apartment complexes right there next to that property. We have the revenue from the sale of the surplus property. So we sold a lot bigger than the one that we have, and so there will be some additional income from that. We looked at propane equipment, recognizing that we've bought some propane buses this year, or are ordering them, with the idea being that we would ultimately transition to a propane fleet as being less expensive and a little bit cleaner than a diesel bus. We could install that and buy the equipment ourselves, but we can also pay a 5 cents a gallon surcharge on propane on the actual gas, and a company like City Service will provide all of the equipment, provide the propane tank, provide the pumps, do all that kind of stuff. So there was a reduction there. We did some things where we looked at removing a couple of overhead doors and creating a little more wall space. So, an overhead door 14 feet tall and 10 feet wide is $20,000. So we just tried to look at some things. Greg identified some things that they could do without. One of those being radiant heat in the maintenance shop. We have, at this point, left it in on the transportation side of things. So when you look at that total lift, it shows $940,700 of potential savings or reductions. And so what you were seeing then is a current cost estimate that we could reduce. And when I initially looked at this and looked at it on Friday, I was thinking right around an ask from the board of $650,000, and that's what's on the sheet. What I would tell you after a little further review and talking with Tom and with Martell is that I would like to see that number closer to $800,000, which is a pretty significant chunk of money. So knowing what we've already allocated out of the interlocal agreement and what I think it's actually going to take to do the job. Personally, I want to see the job done right, on time, on schedule, and there's some things in part of, I would like to have engaged the board in more discussion around this. I know sometimes it feels like things are being sprung on you, but one of the things that we're up against is a timeline for the end of the 21 year. So things like, and Ryan Dunn from Martell brought this up, he said, things like the, I forget the prevailing wage, that increase is gonna go up in 2022. If we can get some of these things under contract during 2021, it'll keep our costs down. You also see a number of businesses that will, at the beginning of their fiscal year, January 1, will increase their prices on products, including steel, which is kind of a driver on this project. And so today I talked with, looking at what our options are. An easy one is the interlocal, but we have about $6.6 million in the interlocal agreement, of which $3.4 million is allocated for either curriculum, the transportation, maintenance building, or set asides for turf, track, and gym floor replacements. So we have about $3,018,000 in the interlocal, and so we could do that. Another option would be to go after an intercap loan. I talked with Board of Investments today. They said it doesn't seem like that would be an issue as long as those dollars are being used to fund the transportation side of this project, which when you look at the total scope, you're probably talking 75 or 80% of the total project is related to transportation, 20% is related to the maintenance and operations side of things. And an intercap loan right now, the interest rate on it is 1.65%, which is really low and quite good. If we were to, say, take out an $800,000 loan over a period of 5 years, you're repaying approximately $165,000 a year on that loan. You're paying about $9,000 in interest, and would actually, working with Todd Watkins today, he said that would actually be his recommendation if you were in front of the board, would be to do the intercap loan. Even though you have the funds available in your interlocal agreement, that's about a third of what's remaining in there. And he said that you may not want to put the board in a position where they're, for whatever those unobligated funds are, and not knowing what the future holds for the district. And then what you would do on the backside of that for those 5 years, looking at our current taxable values, it would be about a 1 mil increase on the elementary and high school side on the transportation levy. So keeping in mind that this year we increased the mills 23 mils to garner the $2.7 million, we're going to see those drop off at the end of next year. And then it would just be a slight increase on that for the remaining 5 years. But we could also do it over 10 years or even up to 15 years on an intercap loan. But a 5-year repayment seems like a reasonable thing. Did I miss anything, Tom?
No, I think that was good. I think the only thing I would add is just that, just for everyone, very basic facility in terms of what it is, not over the top. It's pre-engineered metal buildings are low cost that you can build for, and then all the interior finishes and everything are not fancy by any. And I would echo what Micah said about adding the additional. Really no way to shrink.
Mike, if we went to the intercap loan, would that have to go in front of the voters to be approved?
No, it doesn't. When it's for your transportation facilities, that's one of those exceptions under the law. Rebecca?
I'm actually concerned about some of the places you're talking about reductions. Are we causing ourselves more long-term? I mean, I understand there's cash flow, but there's also long-term money, especially the heating. You mentioned the radiant floor heating in the shop compartment, and that's, the comfort of our employees for long-term work is an issue. And it's cheaper to do it now than to, and I thought also on the propane you were talking about, I'm not sure if that's going to be how expensive that is long-term versus short-term. And are we really saving, or are we just shuffling for our future selves?
I think those are great questions, Rebecca. In a perfect world, I'd say, trustees, can we just please spend what it's going to cost to build this, facility. But there's also some things that, you know, we don't need epoxy flooring, on the concrete finish. We don't need luxury vinyl plank flooring, in the office spaces. You know, so some of those things are definitely reductions. I know Jack was a real proponent of, radiant heat, and we actually had it all line itemed out, which would have saved us about $80,000. But, you know, when you think about washing a bus before you bring it in to work on it, and it's dripping on the floor, your floor is wet, a radiant floor is going to, evaporate the water quicker. It's more cost effective, over the long haul. It's just an expensive system to install, in the first place. You know, and there are some other things in there. One of the ones was that I noted them as the geo piers, and I put it down as $192,000 savings. It's actually $102,500. So one of the things we have to do to satisfy building code is we have to basically put $200,000 worth of aggregate pumped in below ground to stabilize the soil in and around there. There's a thing called liquefaction. In a catastrophic earthquake event, this would preserve life and safety. There is a more expensive alternative, which basically you're putting in these columns underground in a grid pattern to stabilize the soil around that particular structure. And so we said we'll go with the minimum to meet building code on that, and the other one would actually be to try and preserve the structure. But again, no guarantee that it would actually preserve the structure in a really bad earthquake. So, yeah, I mean, you know, and again, I go back to wanting to try and do things right. I can think of lots of examples where we've tried to value engineer and do some things, and we kind of regret it in the long run, and we make do with it. But, you know, those are my opinions from a long-term standpoint. But I also want to be sensitive to, you know, what we have in the interlocal agreement, why we have it, and honor the work that the board has done for the last 11 years to create a fund that actually allows us to do this without passing additional costs on to our taxpayers.
I have a question. So I don't understand the intercap loan as much, but I know it can't be used for everything. So it could be used in this situation. Why would you still recommend the interlocal over the intercap loan?
Well, like I said, I wrote this on Thursday,
Okay,
and it's Tuesday.
So you feel differently?
I feel differently, yes. My recommendation that I would, and I wanted to make sure I get all the questions answered, but my recommendation would be to actually apply for an intercap loan through the Board of Investment.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Yeah, I can't keep up with you. So the motion would be, you're recommending
Yeah.
a different motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
My question is with that as well. So just to clear, the intercap loan would get paid back by an increase in mills.
Mm-hmm.
And for transportation, that doesn't go to a vote.
Correct.
And I know you had mentioned we had a big increase in mills, but I feel like I remember that some other expenses had ended.
Correct.
And was it true, remind me if this is true, that even with the 23 mil increase, it was not at that point any increase, or maybe even still a reduction to the taxpayer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
with this one more mill, is it still going to, like, we were at a reduction, is this still not going to go above?
Yeah, so if you recall the conversation, and this would have been in March of last year when we have, so legally, the Board of Trustees has to notice the public of their intent to increase non-voted levies.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of put out a guesstimate. And then, you know, you wait for your taxable values to come back and see what adjustments you can make. And so that 23 mil increase is only for 1 year. So that sunsets at the end of this tax year. And then after that, so now it'll be a reduction. And then to pay back the loan, it would take a 1 mil increase on the high. We're about $70,000 a mil on the elementary side and $165,000 on the high school side. So a mil and a half would cover the repayment on that without raising taxes.
In
And-
10 years, is that right?
But that,
In 10 years, is that what?
5 years.
5 years, okay,
Yeah.
5 years.
So, and the other part of that in our discussions, was the need to pass a, levy, at the high school side of things. And I would love to be able to go to our taxpayers and say, we can pass this levy without raising your taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And try and see if we can garner support that way. So we could have levied all of it, and everybody could have seen an increase in their taxes, but we opted not to do that. We actually kept it 12% below, what would have kept it at even.
Perfect, those are all great, and I guess, knowing all of that, I feel similar to what Rebecca's saying with some of these things, that we do get these contract changes or change orders and things like that. I would agree that, do it all, careful about the deductions we're making, that we don't have to make them later when we don't have the ability to take out the loan and things.
Yep. So I think, on the conservative side, what I would conservatively say is the motion would be to apply for an intercap loan in an amount not to exceed $800,000. We could do an intercap. Someone could say, I think we need to do more, and we can set a cap on that. And that, because right now we're still in the schematic design phase. We really need to get the pre-engineered steel building ordered because of the lag time from ordering it to construction to installation. You're talking a pretty significant chunk of time. We want to be able to break ground in April and have this building up and operational in October. So we gave ourselves a 6-month construction window, and we just, yeah.
So, am I hearing you correctly that what we need to do now is, okay, any amount, and then we can order the steel building, get contracts in place for things that might very well go up in price in January, and we can readjust and reevaluate in January, February, March before we break down in April. Is that?
Yep.
Oh.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Jack?
Micah, just clarification on the intercap loan and available for transportation, but having maintenance be part of the cost, maintenance, custodial, and print shop. The intercap loan would be paid for by the transportation fund. How would the other percentages be paid back as far as the loan goes?
So what I would see is the amount of money that we have permissibly levied in transportation for this year, plus the intercap loan would be applied towards transportation. And then the money that we've set aside in the interlocal agreement would be used for the maintenance side of things.
Because what I was contemplating, and we haven't had a chance to talk about this part of it, is only go for the loan for that necessary part for transportation and take the balance out of the interlocal agreement.
Yeah, I talked to Ryan a little bit and Tom a little bit about this today. Is at some point we really need to, in that budget, they kind of got some of the things broken out. What is transportation? What is maintenance? So whatever rebar is going into the slab for the maintenance side of things has a cost that's associated with maintenance. But when you look at the 4.5 acres, 80% of it is being paved for the storage of buses. So we really need to get into a formula that says, 80% of all of these funds are maintenance or are transportation funds, and 20% are maintenance and print shop.
Well, and I understand that, but we don't have to we don't have to apply for an intercap loan right away. We can wait till next spring after all the bids are in. Do that.
We could.
And I guess my inclination is to figure out a percentage so that even if the loan ends up being just $500,000 or $600,000 paid back by transportation only, and then the balance just come out of the interlocal agreement. That would be my inclination, just because of the restrictions of it. And I understand how the money goes in from a specific fund, and then it tends to lose its identity in the interlocal agreement. But I would just assume limit the loan to what we're permitted to go there for a loan.
And that's all we would do. If it went outside of transportation, we would have to go to the voters.
Well, no, and I understand that, but I still think that we should use some of the interlocal agreement funds for it.
Beyond
for
the 2.7 that we've already committed.
Yeah,
you know,
because we have $3 million in there, and that it's designed for non-recurring things, and this would be an example of a non-recurring thing. And that by using some of that money, then we're honoring that part of it. And it's a high school expenditure, and the high school side has a lot more money than the elementary side does, and that's where it should come from for all that. So I this is a preference. Micah and I spent a couple hours on Friday, a couple hours on Monday going over all this, asking some of the similar questions that Rebecca was asking. And I'm comfortable going forward. I just don't think we need to borrow the entire amount from the intercap loan, and that we don't have to make that decision until sometime next spring to do that. So the $800,000 is appropriate. I just think the allocation of it doesn't need to be 100% from the interlocal, from the intercap loan program.
Not to be disagreeable, but I kind of disagree just because in my mind, if I see that it is a $6 million cost and 80% of that is transportation, as long as we are spending at least 20% of the total cost out of the interlocal agreement, it still seems like we are staying well within appropriate usage. So, you know, I feel like being really careful about taking too much out of the interlocal agreement is an equally important balance there.
I don't disagree with either of you. And I say that kind of jokingly, but I mean, it really is. It's a board decision on what you want to do. I can present options. Jack's right that, we could take the intercap loan out at any time. Part of me, just from a control standpoint and on the cost and the overall project, is I do want to have some guardrails, as we continue to work through refining what is going into these buildings and what finishes and some of those things. That part's important to me. So, and if we don't approve the intercap loan, tonight and say we want to postpone that until we know what the actual final amount is, I think that's okay. I think it's just this gives me the ability to work with Martell and Morrison and Merrily to move forward with the project, knowing that we have the funds available so that we aren't just spending and then like, okay, how are we going to pay for this? That's probably more of my concern.
Well, you just opened up the door for my motion then. I move to approve not to exceed $800,000 to be paid for by some combination of the interlocal agreement fund and the intercap loan program. Be determined at a later date.
Okay. Thank you, Jack. I think we have public comment on this. Sean?
Yeah. First of all, the radiant heat in the slab. Really cold. On the floor is so much better than overhead that right in your body, you're not standing on it. You realize it costs more. And I also think if you got the money in your account, money you've got in your account, it's a loan, you're actually spending money. So you're spending more money. Wait as long as you can. If you get to the end and you do need to take out, because it's done.
you.
Sue, I'd like to second Jack's motion.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Lance.
Regarding the radiant floor heat, the transportation buildings can have the radiant floor heat in it. The maintenance shop, and then that's because people are gonna be working on the buses and on, underneath and all around. The maintenance building is where the question is for the radiant heat, and I'm inclined to want it in there, but at the same time, they're not gonna be working on vehicles in there. They're just gonna be loading and unloading supplies that are needed for the day, and they're gonna be out and gone. So they're not gonna be in there. There may be an occasional time that somebody's in there during the day, but they're not gonna be working on vehicles in the day. It's mostly just getting things ready to go out and do stuff elsewhere on our facilities. So I can understand not spending it in there on that particular thing. On the intercap loan program, the interest rate changes every June, or July 1st. And it will change July 1st of this year. And if you look back at the history, yes, when interest rates are real low, then the interest rate is low. When interest rates are high, then the interest rate goes up. And with the trajectory of things now, you can expect the interest rate to maybe be not double what it is right now, but it could be 2 to 2.5%, something like that. So it does change every year, and likewise, that loan interest rate will change, just like an adjustable loan that you might have on something.
So you don't get locked into a 1.65 if we get it now?
No, it changes every year. Oh, no, if you took it out now, you'd only get it between now and June 30th, and then July 1st, it would reset again.
Okay.
Rebecca?
I hear you, Jack, that space may not be at the moment allocated towards daily use. We just saw Linderman today, spaces do get reallocated over time. And I think that's, certainly possible with this space that it could migrate in its usage. Overall, in this discussion about interlocal agreement versus the loan, I tend to think that, these loans are only available for very limited uses, and our interlocal agreement is both our rainy day money and our, and is very, very flexible, that we can use it for, well, pretty much anything we want, except for probably a cruise for Micah. I don't think we could spend it on that. But, so spending your inflexible money where you can strikes me as a wiser idea than spending your flexible money on one of the very few things we can spend our flexible money on.
Any other comments? Okay, there is a motion on the table. Jack, would you repeat your motion?
I move to approve, not to exceed $800,000 for the, new maintenance or, transportation maintenance facility, with the funds to come from some prorated based on construction costs between the interlocal agreement and the intercap loan program.
Thank you. Good memory. Did you get all that, Beth?
You know I did.
All right.
Can I have one more discussion point before we vote? Micah, some of this was you being comfortable knowing that you had the money to go forward. Would this motion that doesn't specify what's coming from which fund make you comfortable in this next period of planning?
Yes. And again, we have 6.6 million total in there. Some of it's set aside and earmarked. But on average, we add about 600,000 to our interlocal agreement. That's been the average over the last 10 years. So we'll still have more money coming into the interlocal agreement at the end of this year. What funding sources those come from remains to be seen. But based on the work that we had done with ESSER and ARP and all those things, we know that we'll have funds coming back into the interlocal agreement. So I felt comfortable asking for at least 650,000 out of the interlocal, not even considering the intercap, just knowing that number. So.
Okay. Any other comments? All in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, everyone. Tom, go over to that building.
Okay, next policy updates. This is a third and final reading. Micah?
I'm still up.
Do you need a glass of water?
No, I'm good. I've been eating cough drops. Yep, so these are, 4, policies, that we have. And, the first one is visitor and spectator conduct. So that's just, basically letting our public know that if they're visiting our buildings or at a sporting event or whatever, we do have policies and conduct rules, and they can be asked to, remove themselves if they are not complying with that. And the next one, this is the one where we narrowly or more broadly define school building to include our lands and grounds and not just a structure with 4 walls and a roof. So this would cover things like our playgrounds, our athletic fields, those other spaces that we use instructionally for our students. And credit card use. We modified this one to reflect what our practices are. They are in keeping with what our auditors would ask of us to do. And so this was one that Gwen kind of revamped for us. And the only change was the second sentence of that policy.
Questions, comments from the board? Seen this a few times. Any public comment?
Those what you're changing? Minnesota, like this.
Okay, anybody comfortable making a motion?
I move to approve the policy updates as presented.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Second.
Thank you, Will. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. The next one is just a discussion item. It's second reading on the policy update. Micah?
Yep, so these are another group of policies that we have looked at in policy committee. I think of note is we're deleting 2 of them. One is a recommendation of Montana School Boards Association that's related to the copyright compliance, which is basically just something contained in law, and it was literally a 5-page verbatim, written straight from the law books. So we still have copyright policies. All of those things still apply to our teachers and students. And then the other one was 5140, which was the classified employment and assignment. All of those things were really covered in the CBA, and so to put it in policy with the changes that came from NTSBA, then we would have to go back and redo or at least negotiate those changes in contracts. So we felt comfortable that our CBA has covered those areas.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So, MTSB came out with a slight revision to 1135, lines 40 and 41, I don't remember what it is. But it's not going to reference National School Board Association anymore.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we just need to update that.
True.
Yep. Yeah, that's actually in line 15. That'll be deleted.
I show
And towards the one that she was just on.
line 40 and 41.
Yeah. And also
And in 15. We'll remove all references
Oh,
to,
15 also, okay,
Yeah.
right, thank you.
and then if we end up joining another National School Boards Association, we'll put it back in.
Okay.
Acronyms,
Yes.
okay. So you will see these again next meeting, okay? Next is the consent agenda for elementary only, purchases over 10,000.
Yeah, I'd like to motion to approve that consent agenda.
Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Kim. Been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved unanimously. Consent agenda district-wide. Any questions? Do you care to make a motion? Any public comment? Want to make a motion?
We approve the district-wide consent agenda.
Thank you, Diane. Is there a second? Thanks, Ursula. Been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion approved unanimously. Next page. Informational items and reports. You want to talk about those items on there?
Oh. Yep. Sorry, everybody.
I mean, I could wing it, but.
I'm on a roll tonight, so. So we have our board docs training, that is listed on there. And so we are going to be moving away from e-convene, which is what we're currently using, into, hopefully something that is more user-friendly, more, end-user-friendly, public-friendly. And so it will require some training, quite extensive training for our central office administrative team, but then also for the board to understand how you get in and access and use that. And so Beth has been working on a schedule with trainers who will be coming to the district to work with us on that. So you can see your times there. It is somewhat flexible. If that time does not work for you, you'd be able to let Beth know, and we can make some arrangements to shift some things around there. And then on December 1st, here in the Flex Room, we are going to be having a luncheon with Payne West Insurance, so Kim Thomas and Brad Sloan. This is something that they do every year. They review our insurance policy, what's covered. You get quite a handy booklet to read through, and then what our experience claims have been, and some things that they might suggest for us to improve our position with our insurance. So everything from slips and falls to accidents on the job, safety, maintenance of buildings, those kind of things. It's pretty comprehensive, but you're all invited. We would ask that you RSVP that you can make it, because they do provide lunch for you.
Thanks, Micah. Trustee report. I think we'll start at one end and move through. Will?
So Sue and I were last night at the West Valley School Board meeting, and I have a few takeaways. One is that they approved a whole bunch of policies for the second and final reading.
We just kept our mouths closed.
Yeah, we didn't object. The other was that they're full of kids, students, and even that night, last night, they were converting two previously used spaces into new classrooms to take some overflow. And so also as a part of last night's meeting, they presented their plans for a new middle school. And they're pretty close to putting forth a bond for that. And this middle school will be going, if they get the properties that they hope to get, kind of across the street from Glacier High. So we've been talking about expansion in the school district, and it's definitely something we're talking about.
Okay, Ursula.
I went to the first beach tournament, and since nobody was here for Glacier, I will give a shout out to Glacier that they call it the Crosstown, and it is Glacier and Flathead, but it's also a lot of the more local schools, which is nice. They don't always all compete together, so you get Whitefish and Columbia Falls and Frenchtown and the smaller high schools around Missoula, the smaller high schools around here, and they all get together, which is nice. They don't all get to meet each other very many times through the season, so they were all together, and Glacier did win. Congratulations to Glacier, and Flathead got second, so congratulations to Flathead. And I say it every year, but Prestige kids are a very put together and amazing bunch of kids. They will rule the world, it seems.
Mark?
I would just like to say congratulations to Flathead for taking second and Glacier for taking first in the interlocal speech debate. It sounds like that's what it was called.
Yes. Thanks, Mark. Kim?
I'm gonna save my voice or I'll go into coughing.
You can talk twice next meeting. Lance?
No report.
Rebecca?
I guess nobody else has mentioned, Flathead's play. Flathead did an excellent job, with the school musical. Oh, I guess the report, but with the school musical. And almost as good as the job as Glacier did, last month with their first play of the season. So, gotta say yet again, it's possible that Glacier was first and Flathead was second, although it's close. Yeah, it's just, as Ursula says, she thinks that the, speech and debate kids, to me, just watching these kids perform in any way gives me hope for the future, and it really, really does, to see how, and I know there's some students who need support and whatever, but to see how on top some of the students who are just at the top of their game are is just, gives me hope.
Ann?
Great tour at LEC today, so thanks from Jody.
No comment.
And I've said what I need to say. So administrative reports. Micah, you want to keep talking?
No comment.
Callie?
Thank you. Just an update on a few things. I had the opportunity last October 28th to be a guest speaker at the college board class, and some of you were there, so hopefully I represented the district well. Covered 3 topics: the curriculum review cycles for our standard review, hot topics, how to approach them, and then also there was interest from some of our partner districts. They want to know a little bit of the nuance between curricular activities, co-curricular activities, and extracurricular activities. So I had a good time doing that, and so thank you for familiar faces in the audience for that. A lot of our fall activities, as our students have mentioned, are ending. So we've been hosting divisional volleyball tournaments, and we have teams that will be going out on the road to state tournaments and playoff games and all that. So that's been fun to support those. I would like to acknowledge a little extra detail. We had the opportunity to go to the Flathead musical, and your son was just wonderful in there. So you can take a proud mom moment. It was fun watching him. We are right in the middle of our OPI Cycle 1 standards review, and we have 30 pacing guides that have been submitted. And I hope that you got your email today, those of you that are on the curriculum committee, and don't panic when you see 30 pacing guides in front of you. There's a really good, manageable process to go through those. And we'll have our orientation with that on Monday and start working on those things, and it'll be fun. It really, and the teachers have done an outstanding job. They're quality pacing guides, and we'll be in good shape. So I'm looking forward to that on Monday. Also, we are ramping up some of our building level training with our instructional coaches and administrators concerning our formal assessments for the year. So we have state required assessments such as ACT and SBAC and those type of things. And interestingly enough, the lead time to be organized to properly administer those assessments is months and months and months of prep time for that. And the layers and layers of security that we have to make sure is in place. And so we are actually starting that. We're starting our training, making sure that we know exactly what's going on and when it's going on, excuse me, so that we're ready to go. Had an opportunity to go last Wednesday to our student-built house. If you haven't had the chance to drive by yet, it's right next door to the one we built last year. And this year, it's a single level, and our instructors and students actually are really happy that it's a single level, and they said that the biggest difference is that there's more teaching time. Last year they were in a scramble because it was quite a nice, fancy, large house, 2-story, et cetera. And so they were just always scrambling, trying to work on this house, and they didn't get the teaching time in that they wanted. But this year it's like, got it. We also have a third-year student that has really taken a big leadership role with our freshmen in the class, and that's just an ideal situation, that the ownership and just kind of continuing with the program through the students. Spent some time at LEC, and you probably heard Jody mention today that they have a full house over there, and 150, 160 students, and that is remarkable. And have a few more freshmen in than they usually do, but hats off to Jody and her team for having that many students over there. If the one student mentioned the Veterans Day Assembly on Thursday, that's at Flathead, and if you have an RSVP and you are free at that time, I think it's at 1:30 or something like that. It's in the afternoon. Flathead, both schools actually do a really good job of honoring their veterans. And you kind of leave there with a happy heart, being able to honor some very incredible people. And then there'll be some of us going to the Chamber Grand event, which is tomorrow night, and we'll be representing our school positions at the Chamber event, and looking forward to that. So that's about it. As you can see, a wide variety of things going on. All good.
Thanks,
Thank
Kelly.
you, Sue.
Matt?
Callie just mentioned that her husband Mike is a keynote speaker at the Veterans Assembly on Thursday, so I'm looking forward to hearing him and meeting him. I haven't met him yet. Yeah, a few updates. It was nice to be able to join some of you on the KMS tour earlier this month. I have some pictures to share with some of you that didn't make it. Some of our trustees tried to climb the wall at middle school, and that happened at the moment. So just hold on to those for now. And then we've been participating in some professional development with the elementary principals on redefining and solidifying some of the plans in our wheel training that we shared in the curriculum meeting. That's gone well. And then Kelly and I have been working collaboratively on some more grant opportunities. We've shared our ideas with Micah, and he's approved them, so hopefully we'll have some new ideas coming forward. And then our last two grants that we applied for are going well. So the ELC grant, and that was for more laptops and iPads and connectivity. We received all the computers, we've gotten information out to parents, and we still have computers and hotspots available. So we'll make another push with getting those devices out. I think schools have done a really good job in the past of qualifying students by free introduced lunch, and the only way you can get access to some of these extra resources is through that. These grants that we've applied for don't have those parameters, and so we've gotten some of the probably more traditional requests, but we're not getting the requests for families that may have the need but may not think they qualify. So it's exciting to be able to get those devices out to students and families that could just benefit from extra available resources right now. And then the other grant that we've collaborated on with other area schools is going well, and that has to do with the testing sites and locations. So we've been up and running for about a month, and we've tested 1,342 individuals, 214 positives, with about a 15.9 positivity rate. 22 students have been tested on site. So one of our goals was to have these remote sites available so that if you had a sick kiddo, as a parent, you could swing by and very conveniently, either before or after school or even during the day, test your kid and not bring them to the actual school building if they were sick. So almost all of our cases are happening that way. And it's just a really good compliment, I think, to the parents in our community that are being conscientious about how to just take this simple screener if you're sick or not feeling well, to go through that site, and then that does save, especially in the elementary school, it saves in the quarantines, and then the inter-class spread. So Micah's been doing a good job of tracking our active cases. I don't know what the exact number is right now, but we've been seeing the active cases in our school go down. I think it's a combination of lots of factors, but one of the big factors I think is this ramp up of testing, and then families choosing to isolate their family unit and not send kids to school, even if a kid tests negative, but parents test positive. So I'm really happy with the effort, and I think it's going really well. It's one of those projects you get off the ground, and now it's just running, and that's a really good feeling. That's it.
Thank you, Matt. Great segue into,
Oh, wait a minute, I wanted to say something.
oh,
I do have something to say. How come everybody's forgotten about Glacier boys taking second in state soccer?
your job, just wait.
Well, no, that would have Scott Wardell, but he's not here. I don't have anything to do with soccer anymore. But no, congratulations to them.
Thank you for remembering.
That's a red flag on, a red card on you. It's not a flag, it's a card.
Thank you.
And please notice that the minutes from the committee meetings are linked to the agenda. Read through them. You are aware of everything that's been discussed. And now, safe return to schools and continuity of service plan.
So when we updated this, these were the numbers that Matt had for tests conducted, positive tests, negative tests, and then that positivity rate. So 1,342 is the new number with 214 positive tests. So, you know, it seems like that's working for us. And to illustrate that, as of tonight, we have 7 students in quarantine, which I don't know if we've had that in a year, and 8 positives, and 0 staff in quarantine and 4 positives. So we're at 12 positive cases in a school district with over 7,000 people in it. So that's pretty good. And that kind of segues a little bit into the next slide. So this is our average daily attendance by week, by school. You can see when we first opened up, we had 96.7% of all of our students present on average. And you've seen some decline in the bottom row is the district. So October 18th through the 22nd, we were about 88%. If you scroll down a little bit, Callie, the last 2 weeks of the year are in there. So November 1st through November 5th, we were about 90.4%. We'd like to see that higher in some cases, but that seems to be about where we're trending, is around 90%. that 90% is, you know, if you look at our quarantines and positive cases, those aren't, you know, those aren't having as big of an impact as they were last year when we were dealing with this. So, just kudos to everybody, and it's been an all-out, team effort to, safely reopen our schools and, keep things rolling. So we're doing well. If we could fix the sub shortage, that would be amazing. Our staff, our paras and our teachers are, picking up a lot of extra, time, in their day, covering for each other. So we're grateful to, our KEA and our classified staff. They go above and beyond, and they can always say no, but that rarely happens. So thank you.
Thank you. Now is the time for public comment. This is the time for comment on public matters that are not on the main agenda. Members of the audience are encouraged to briefly address the trustees on an issue that is not on the agenda. I invite you to make comments on significant items, and public matters do not include any pending legal matters, private personnel issues, or private student issues. Please do not attempt to address such issues at this time, or you will be ruled out of order. Please note that individuals will be given 3 minutes for public comment. So, is there any public comment?
Hi, I'm Sean Candido, and I watched the Hedges update earlier today and thought it was great. They seem to be really caring about their students with the tiered program. Anyway, I didn't see anywhere in that tier though where they start involving parents. That was kind of concerning to me. Seems like they could get all the way to the school psychologist and deem your child as ADHD or whatever, and I didn't see where parents were even involved in the process in any of those tiers. Which brings me to Flathead High School, and 3 students, Bill, Bob, and Brandon. Their names have been changed to protect the innocent, but these kids don't really feel like Flathead cares about them. Bill and Bob are struggling with, well, they're not really struggling, they're just skipping class all the time. And they're not being held accountable for skipping class. There doesn't seem to be an attendance policy. If there is one, it's not being enforced because it seems like all students can skip class without any recourse. There's no detention. I mean, you just put up a example, it looks like at least 700 kids are gone every day. If there's 7,000, 90%, that'd be 700. And then Brandon, he's pretty good at sports, but he has all Fs. Why is he playing sports? Why do we let students who have Fs play in sports? Shouldn't the academics come first? I mean, they used to always come first. Is there still policy? Is there still a policy on this? Is it not being enforced? Because it should be. Because you're making these students feel like you don't care about them. Because nobody's holding them accountable. Kids need rules, and they need to be held accountable. And I think that the policy needs to be in place in order to do that. You need to come along and tell Phil and Bob that, hey, it's not okay to skip class. You need to be in school. You're going to get a detention. You know, you don't have a valid reason. You're going to get a detention. And then you got to come along with Brandon, and you got to say, let's go, Brandon.
30 seconds.
You need to get your grades up so you can play. There's an exception. I don't care if they're the best member of the team. They need to be off on the bench until they get their grades up. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Go ahead, Lynn.
Explain the SOS.
Sure.
So tier 1 is standard general education students. During tier 2, parents are contacted about special services or programs that the students are in. And there's also, if there's IEP or 504 plan, the parents meet at scheduled time. So it's in tier 2 that parents are involved. Tier 3, meeting with the school psych, the parents are definitely involved. They sign off. They're there for the information from the assessment along with a team of teachers. So I know you just got a snippet of what the SOS was, and I just didn't want you to leave with the feeling that parents were not involved, because they are involved multiple times.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay. Yeah, is there a motion to adjourn?
That's my job, Lynn. I would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
Is there a second? Thank you, Rebecca and Kim. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion, or meeting